The daughter of the fourth richest man in America hadn't eaten in a week. Every specialist, every treatment, every threat. Nothing. She was 8 years old. She was blind. And she had decided to disappear. The hospital corridor stretched empty at 3 in the morning. An abandoned wheelchair sat motionless near room 447, its leather seat still indented from the last patient who'd used it. On the floor, a dinner tray lay untouched. Mashed potatoes gone cold, green beans congealed in their own juice, a carton of chocolate milk sweating condensation onto the linoleum. The heart monitor inside the room beeped in slow, measured intervals. Each beep a reminder that something was still working. Something was still trying. What the doctors didn't know, what her father couldn't see, was that someone had already noticed. Sterling Ashford built empires, pharmaceutical companies, tech conglomerates, infrastructure networks that connected half the country. 42 billion in assets, according to the last Forbes estimate. He understood systems. He understood efficiency. He understood predictability. His entire life had been constructed on the principle that everything could be measured, optimized, and controlled. His daughter, Poet, was the only thing in his life he couldn't solve. And that terrified him more than he'd ever admit. She'd been born premature, 3 months early. Vision lost at 2 years old due to complications no amount of money could reverse. Her mother, gone at 4. Traffic accident, drunk driver, Tuesday afternoon. The kind of ordinary tragedy that happens to ordinary people, except it happened to them. After that, Sterling stopped coming home. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared in the only way he knew how. By paying for the best. The best neurologists from Johns Hopkins, the best child psychologists from Stanford, the best private pediatric wing at Mercy General, where Poet now resided in a room that cost more per night than most people made in a month. Floor-to-ceiling windows, private bathroom, a television she couldn't see, fresh flowers delivered every morning that she couldn't appreciate. But Poet stopped talking at 6, stopped smiling at 7, and now, at 8, she'd stopped eating. The medical files stacked higher each week. More prescriptions, more appointments, more specialists flying in from Boston, from Chicago, from Los Angeles. They ran tests, they adjusted medications, they tried behavioral therapy, occupational therapy, sensory integration therapy. They tried everything except the one thing she actually needed. Someone to just sit with her. Sterling sat in his corner office on the 47th floor of the Ashford Tower, rain streaking down the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. His phone vibrated on the mahogany desk, the hospital again, but he didn't pick it up. He'd already spoken to Dr. Patel twice that day. He already knew what they were going to say. The same thing they'd been saying for 6 days. She won't eat. We're starting IV nutrition. We're monitoring her closely. We're considering a feeding tube. We need you to come in. But Sterling didn't go, because going in meant facing the truth he'd been running from for 4 years. That he'd failed her in the way that mattered most. This is the kind of story that doesn't make headlines. The kind that happens in the spaces between wealth and attention, where suffering exists quietly because everyone assumes someone with that much money couldn't possibly have real problems. At Black Journal Stories, we tell the stories that reveal character when no one's watching, the moments that expose who we really are when everything else is stripped away. Solomon Hayes wasn't supposed to be on the 4th floor. He worked nights, basement, laundry, cafeteria. The parts of the hospital people pretend don't exist, the infrastructure that keeps everything running but never gets acknowledged. 58 years old. 2 jobs. This one and weekend shifts at a warehouse across town. 3 grandkids he supported after his daughter fell into addiction and disappeared into the streets of North Philadelphia. one remaining daughter who barely called, too busy with her own survival to check on his. He'd been at Mercy General for 14 years, clocked in every night at 8 p.m., clocked out every morning at 6 a.m. 10 hours of mopping floors, emptying trash, cleaning bathrooms, wiping down surfaces that doctors and nurses touched without thinking. In 14 years, maybe 3 people had learned his first name. No one knew his last. That's how it worked when you were part of the machinery. Visible enough to do the work, invisible enough to never be seen. But Solomon had a gift. Not the kind you put on a resume. Not the kind that gets you promoted or recognized. The kind that only shows up when someone's forgotten how to be seen. He noticed things. The way a person held their shoulders when they were carrying too much. The way silence could mean different things. Peace or resignation, or the quiet before breaking. He heard Poet before he saw her. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday when Solomon first pushed his cleaning cart past room 447. The door was cracked open, unusual for the private wing, where patients and families usually kept their doors firmly closed against the intrusion of hospital life. He paused, not because he was supposed to, but because something in the air felt wrong. Not the antiseptic smell or the mechanical hum of medical equipment. Something else. Something he couldn't name but recognized. He peered through the crack. The room was dark except for the glow of monitors and the dim light filtering in from the hallway. The blinds were drawn tight against the windows, blocking out the city lights 4 stories below. In the bed, a small figure sat perfectly upright, facing the window she couldn't see. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers moving in a repetitive pattern. Index finger to thumb, middle finger to thumb, ring finger to thumb, pinky to thumb, then back again, over and over and over. A self-soothing mechanism, Solomon recognized. His youngest granddaughter did the same thing when she was anxious. On the bedside table, a dinner tray sat untouched. On the floor beside the bed, 3 more meal trays had been stacked by someone who'd given up trying to feed her. Solomon stood there for a long moment, his hand on the cart. He wasn't supposed to enter patient rooms. That wasn't his job. His job was to empty the trash cans in the hallway, mop the floors, and move on. Don't engage with patients. Don't interrupt care. Stay invisible. But something in the way that little girl sat, so still, so determined to disappear, made him forget the rules. He stepped back, continued down the hallway with his cart, and finished his shift. But when he clocked out at 6 a.m., he didn't go home. He sat in his car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, thinking about that child sitting alone in the dark. Then he drove to the corner store, bought a small battery-powered radio, and drove back to the hospital. He badged back in through the service entrance, took the stairs to the 4th floor, and knocked softly on the door of room 447. No answer. He opened the door anyway. Poet didn't turn, didn't acknowledge him, just kept her fingers moving through their pattern, her face pointed toward the window. Solomon didn't say anything. He just pulled the chair from beside the door, the one that looked like it had never been sat in, and lowered himself into it slowly. His knees creaked. His back ached from 10 hours of bending and lifting. But he sat. And then he pulled the small radio from his jacket pocket, extended the antenna, and turned the dial until he found a jazz station. Piano, upright bass, no words, just music. He turned the volume down low, barely above a whisper, and set it on the armrest of the chair. Then he waited. 3 minutes passed, then 5. Poet's fingers kept moving through their pattern, but her head tilted slightly. Not toward Solomon. She didn't know he was there. toward the sound. The music filled the silence in a way that didn't demand anything, didn't ask her to talk or respond or be anything other than what she was. 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. Solomon watched her fingers slow, watched the tension in her small shoulders ease just slightly, watched her head tilt a little more as if she were trying to hear something she'd forgotten existed. At 20 minutes, he stood up slowly, left the radio on the windowsill, and walked out. He didn't speak, didn't explain, didn't wait for acknowledgement. No one saw him leave. By the time Sterling Ashford arrived at Mercy General 3 days later, Poet still hadn't eaten. Dr. Rohan Patel met him in a conference room off the main pediatric wing, neutral territory, where difficult conversations could happen away from the patient's room. 3 other doctors sat around the table with charts and tablets, their faces arranged in careful expressions of professional concern. Mr. Ashford, we've exhausted the psychiatric evaluations, Dr. Patel began, his voice measured. She's not clinically depressed. She's not displaying symptoms of any eating disorder we can identify. Her blood work is stable. Neurologically, she's... Then try harder. Sterling's voice was flat, not loud, not emotional, just final. Silence settled over the room like dust. With respect, sir, Dr. Patel continued carefully, this isn't about trying. She's grieving. She's 8. Grief doesn't wait for permission. Sterling's hand tightened into a fist on the table, knuckles going white. The doctors watched the transformation of his expression, the micro-movements of muscle and tension that spoke louder than words. This was a man who solved problems, who fixed broken systems, who had never encountered an obstacle that couldn't be overcome with enough money, enough expertise, enough force of will. And here was his daughter, 8 years old and blind, defeating him with nothing but silence and refusal. Sterling stood. The meeting was over. I'm moving her to Boston Children's Hospital, he said. They have a sensory deprivation specialist who's done groundbreaking work with blind children who've experienced trauma. We leave Friday. Dr. Patel didn't argue. He'd learned over the past 4 years that arguing with Sterling Ashford was like arguing with gravity. He just wrote the discharge order, signed it, and watched Sterling leave the conference room. Sterling didn't go to Poet's room. He went back to his office. That night, Solomon returned. This time he brought a small cloth bag with him, the kind his grandmother used to carry to church on Sundays. Inside was a wooden bowl, handcrafted and worn smooth from decades of use, a spoon, and a thermos filled with oatmeal, plain, warm, with cinnamon and honey the way his grandmother used to make it before she died. Before he learned that some people don't stay, but the things they teach you do. Poet was in the same position, upright, facing the window, fingers moving through their pattern. The radio was still on the windowsill where he'd left it, and he noticed with quiet satisfaction that someone, maybe Poet, maybe a nurse, had turned it back on. The same jazz station. The same gentle music filling the silence. Solomon set the cloth bag on the bedside table and pulled the chair close. He didn't offer the oatmeal to her, didn't announce himself. Just opened the thermos, poured the oatmeal into the wooden bowl, and set it beside her with the spoon. Then he sat down and spoke for the first time. You don't have to eat it, he said, his voice low and steady, textured with age and cigarettes he'd quit 20 years ago. But I'm gonna sit here till it gets cold. 11 minutes passed. The monitor beeped. The jazz played softly. Poet didn't move. Then her hand stopped its pattern. Slowly, so slowly it was almost imperceptible. Her right hand lifted from her lap. Her fingers reached out, trembling slightly, searching. They found the edge of the bedside table first, traced along the wood, found the spoon, paused, her fingers wrapped around the handle, then released. Reached further, found the bowl, the ceramic was still warm. She kept her hand there, palm flat against the side of the bowl, feeling the heat seep into her skin. Solomon didn't say anything, didn't encourage or prompt, didn't move. He just sat. When her fingers finally wrapped around the bowl, feeling its weight and warmth, Solomon stood up slowly and left. The bowl was still full. The oatmeal was still untouched. But her hand stayed on it, even after he was gone. In the hallway, Valencia Pierce watched him leave. She'd been a nurse for 19 years, long enough to have seen every kind of parent and every kind of grief. She'd seen mothers who slept in their children's hospital rooms for months. She'd seen fathers who disappeared and never came back. She'd seen insurance companies decide who lived long enough to heal and who didn't. She wasn't naive about the world, but she also wasn't cruel. And when she saw Solomon leaving Poet's room for the third night in a row, she pulled him aside in the break room during his supposed lunch break. "You're not authorized for that floor," she said quietly, pouring herself coffee that had been sitting in the pot since 7 p.m. and tasted like burnt regret. Solomon nodded. "I know. If her father finds out, he won't." "Solomon, she's starving, Valencia." The use of her first name stopped her. Most people called her Nurse Pierce. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she recognized. Not pity, not savior complex. Just the quiet recognition of someone who understood what it meant to be forgotten. "I know," she said finally. "But you can't fix this. You're a janitor. I know what he is." They stood there in silence, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, the sound of distant monitors and footsteps filling the space between words. Valencia reached into her pocket and pulled out her keycard. 4th floor access, she held it out. "After 11 p.m. only," she said. "If anyone asks, you're cleaning spills." Solomon took it, didn't say thank you. Didn't need to. "Don't make me regret this," Valencia added. He didn't answer, just pocketed the keycard and went back to work. Over the next 5 nights, Solomon established a rhythm. He'd finish his regular shift, clock out, then badge back in using Valencia's keycard. Every night he brought something different. Not hospital food, not expensive gourmet meals, simple things. Things that carried memory and care. Night 1, the oatmeal. Poet moved it closer to herself but didn't eat. Night 2, crackers and apple slices arranged on a small plate. 1 cracker was gone by morning. Night 3, soup in the wooden bowl, half eaten. Night 4, toast with butter, cut into strips the way children prefer. Empty plate. Night 5, scrambled eggs, still warm. Poet held the fork. Solomon never asked her why she stopped eating, never told her to be strong, never said it would be okay. He just showed up, sat in the chair, turned on the radio, and waited. But it wasn't the food. Food was just the vehicle. The real sustenance was something else entirely. It was the way Solomon never treated silence like a problem that needed fixing. Never filled the room with pity or platitudes or empty reassurances. Never asked her to explain what she couldn't articulate. He just existed next to her, requiring nothing in return. No performance, no gratitude, no proof that she was getting better. He gave her permission to simply be. On the 6th night, Poet spoke, not to Solomon directly, to the air, to the darkness, to whatever force had taken her mother and her sight and left her alone in a world she couldn't see and didn't understand. My dad doesn't come anymore. Her voice was small, unused, like an instrument that had been left in a closet for too long. Solomon didn't flinch, didn't offer comfort, just nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "I know," he said. "Do you think he forgot?" Solomon was quiet for a long time. The jazz played softly. The monitor beeped. Rain started to fall against the windows, a sound like static, like the world breathing. "I think he's scared," Solomon said finally. People forget how to be close when they're scared. They forget that being close doesn't mean fixing. It just means staying. Poet turned her face toward him then, not because she could see him, but because she'd finally located where his voice was coming from, where the presence she'd been feeling every night was actually sitting. A single tear traced down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away, just turned back toward the window and picked up her fork and ate all of the eggs, every bite. The discovery happened during morning rounds. Dr. Patel was reviewing Poet's chart when something caught his eye. He stared at the numbers, then looked at the day nurse. "She's eating." His voice carried disbelief. The nurse nodded. "Started 4 days ago. Small portions, mostly at night, but consistently." Dr. Patel studied the chart more closely. Weight stabilizing, vitals improving, IV nutrition reduced. After 6 days of complete refusal, this was borderline miraculous. "Who's been with her?" "No one, doctor, just the standard checks." "Family?" "Mr. Ashford hasn't visited since Tuesday." Dr. Patel walked to Poet's room, his mind trying to solve a puzzle that didn't fit any pattern he recognized. When he pushed open the door, he found Poet sleeping. Actually sleeping, not just lying there awake in the dark. On her bedside table sat a wooden bowl he didn't recognize, a cloth napkin folded neatly, and on the windowsill, a small battery-powered radio, playing jazz so quietly he almost didn't hear it. He picked up the bowl, smelled it. Cinnamon, honey, homemade. This wasn't hospital food. He called security. Sometimes the moments that change everything don't feel dramatic when they're happening. There's no music swell, no spotlight. Just a man standing in a security office while 2 guards and a head of security named Mateo Moreno review badge logs and security footage. Just questions being asked in flat, procedural tones. Just the slow realization that trying to save someone might cost you everything. "You've been entering a patient's room," Mateo said, his voice not unkind but not gentle either. "Unauthorized. For a week." Solomon didn't deny it. "Yes, sir." "Do you understand that's grounds for immediate termination? Possibly legal action?" "Yes, sir." Mateo Moreno was not a cruel man. He'd worked hospital security for 16 years. He'd escorted out belligerent family members and drunk visitors and staff members caught stealing medication. He understood rules existed for reasons, but he also understood that sometimes rules and right weren't the same thing. Still, his job wasn't to decide. His job was to enforce. "Why?" Mateo asked, genuine curiosity breaking through the procedural tone. Solomon looked at him, calm, tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying things for so long, you forget what it feels like to put them down. "Because she was dying," Solomon said simply. And no one was talking to her. Valencia Pierce stepped forward from where she'd been standing in the doorway. She'd known this was coming. She'd made her peace with it when she handed Solomon her key card. "He saved her life," she said. Mateo looked at her. "That's not his job. Maybe it should have been someone's." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. with things that couldn't be said aloud in an official capacity, with the gap between what the system permitted and what humanity required. Mateo closed the file, stood up. "Pack your things, Solomon. You're suspended pending review. If the family presses charges, they will," Valencia said quietly. "Then this is over." Solomon nodded, removed his badge from the lanyard around his neck and set it on Mateo's desk. Walked out without argument or plea. No defense, no explanation beyond what he'd already given. He didn't look back. At Black Journal Stories, we're drawn to these inflection points. The moments when doing the right thing costs something real. When kindness isn't free or easy or celebrated. When the choice is between what's permitted and what's necessary, and someone chooses necessity, knowing full well what it will cost them. Sterling Ashford found out 3 hours later. Not from the hospital directly, not from Dr. Patel, from his head of legal affairs, who'd been contacted by Mercy General's risk management team about a potential liability situation involving his daughter. A janitor did what? Sterling's voice was ice. His assistant, sitting outside his office, heard the sound of glass breaking. A paperweight, maybe, or a drinking glass. When she opened the door to check, Sterling was standing at the window. 47 stories above the city, fists clenched so tight his hands were shaking. "Get me the hospital director," he said. "Now." The call lasted 4 minutes. Sterling didn't raise his voice. He never raised his voice. But his assistant heard enough through the closed door to understand that someone's career was about to end. "You let a stranger into my daughter's room." The hospital director's voice came through tinny and apologetic. "Mr. Ashford, I assure you we're handling. He's an employee, background checked. He's been with us 14 years. He's a janitor who violated protocol. I want him arrested." "Sir, she's eating again. The staff says he's the reason." "I don't care." Sterling hung up, sat down in his chair, stared at his reflection in the black screen of his computer monitor. He hadn't been to the hospital in 6 days. He'd been in meetings, calls, negotiations, building things, acquiring things, solving problems that affected thousands of employees and millions of customers. And a janitor had done what he couldn't. The thought sat in his chest like a stone. Poet stopped eating again the day after Solomon was suspended, not gradually, immediately. The morning breakfast tray was pushed away untouched. Lunch refused. Dinner turned toward the wall. The radio was gone, confiscated by security as potential evidence. The wooden bowl was bagged and tagged. The routine that had been carefully built over 6 nights was dismantled in 6 minutes. Dr. Patel tried to explain. The nurses tried to coax. They tried bringing different foods. They tried reasoning. They tried everything except bringing back the one thing that had actually worked. Sterling finally came on day 9. Not because he wanted to, because Dr. Patel had called him directly and said words that Sterling couldn't ignore. "If she doesn't eat soon, we'll have to place a feeding tube. That's a surgical procedure. There will be anesthesia, given her history." Sterling arrived at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. He hadn't been in Poet's room in 3 weeks. When he pushed open the door, the first thing that struck him was how small she looked. Not physically, though she'd lost weight, but how diminished, how faded, like she was already halfway gone. He sat in the chair beside her bed. The same chair Solomon had used. It felt wrong to sit in it, like he was trespassing. "Poet." She didn't move. "Poet, you need to eat." Nothing. "Please." That word, please. Sterling Ashford didn't beg, didn't plead. He negotiated. He dictated. He decided. But here, in this room, with this child, He had no leverage, no authority, no power. Just a father who'd failed his daughter in every way that mattered. "Where's Solomon?" Poet asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Sterling froze. "Who?" "The man who brings me dinner." Silence expanded like a wound. He's not coming back," Sterling said. "Why?" "Because I said so." Poet turned then, not toward her father, away from him, toward the wall, toward nothing. "Then I'm not eating?" she said. Sterling stood up, walked to the door, his hand on the handle. He wanted to fight, to explain that he was protecting her, that letting strangers into her room was a liability, that there were rules for reasons, that he'd done nothing wrong. But when he opened his mouth, nothing came out, because he knew the truth. So he left, again. The chapel at Mercy General was always empty during the day. Too bright, too honest. People came there at night, when darkness made it easier to admit things. But Valencia Pierce sat there at 2 p.m. on a Friday afternoon because she'd been suspended too, for providing Solomon with unauthorized access. And she had nowhere else to go. When she heard footsteps echo in the hallway outside, she didn't turn. She just waited. And when Sterling Ashford walked past, she called his name. "Mr. Ashford." He stopped, turned slowly, looked at this woman in scrubs and a cardigan who had no business speaking to him. "I'm one of Poet's nurses," Valencia said. "I don't have time. Your daughter is dying." The words hit like a physical blow. Sterling took a step forward, his face darkening. "She's being treated by the best." "She doesn't need treatment," Valencia interrupted. "She needs her father. You don't know. I know Solomon Hayes spent 14 nights sitting with your daughter, unpaid, off the clock, risking his job because someone had to." Sterling's jaw tightened, his fists clenched, but he didn't speak. Valencia stood up from the pew. She was shorter than him, older, tired from 19 years of bearing witness to suffering. But she held his gaze. "She started eating because he showed up," Valencia said. "She stopped eating because you sent him away. You think that's about food?" She let the question hang in the air like smoke. "I've been a nurse for 19 years, Mr. Ashford. I've watched parents lose children to cancer, to accidents, to things no one could stop, things that aren't anyone's fault." She took a step closer. "But you're losing yours to pride." Sterling's fists unclenched, then clenched again. His breathing was shallow. His face was a mask of control barely holding. He didn't respond, didn't defend himself. Just turned and walked out of the chapel. But this time, he went to Poet's room. The lights were dim. Poet sat in her usual position, upright, facing the window, fingers moving through their pattern. Sterling pulled the chair close and sat down. He didn't know how to start, didn't have a script for this, no talking points, no strategy. So he just started. "I don't know how to do this." Poet didn't answer. "I don't know how to sit with you, how to talk to you, how to be here. I know how to solve problems, how to fix systems, how to make things work. But you," his voice cracked, "you're not a system, and I don't know how to fix what's broken, because I think..." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I think I'm what's broken." The monitor beeped. Rain fell against the window. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang. Poet's hand stopped moving. Slowly, so slowly she turned her palm up on the bed, open, waiting. Sterling stared at it. That small hand. Those fingers that had traced patterns in the air for so long because no one had offered her anything else to hold on to. He hadn't held her hand since her mother died. Since the funeral where Poet had stood in a black dress too big for her, unable to see the casket, unable to understand why everyone was crying. And Sterling had stood 3 feet away because he didn't know how to comfort her without breaking himself. He reached out, slow, shaking. When his fingers touched hers, she didn't pull away. She held on. Sterling broke, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. The way people break when they've been holding something too long and their hands finally give out. Tears came, silent, unwelcome, real. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Poet didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. She just squeezed his hand and whispered, "I want Solomon back." These are the stories we tell at Black Journal Stories. Not the ones where redemption is easy, but the ones where it's earned through the hard work of admitting failure. Where transformation doesn't happen in grand gestures, but in the quiet moment when someone finally tells the truth. Sterling had Solomon's address from HR files. He'd never been to that part of the city. His GPS took him to a neighborhood he'd only ever seen from highway overpasses. A 4-story walk-up with cracked sidewalks and graffiti on the mailboxes. Bars on the ground floor windows. A broken street light. The smell of garbage and car exhaust. Sterling sat in his car for 10 minutes. A Mercedes in a neighborhood where luxury was a liability. He thought about turning around, about sending someone else, about solving this problem the way he solved everything, with money and intermediaries and distance. But Poet's hand in his had felt real in a way nothing else had in 4 years. So he got out of the car. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled like old cooking oil and cigarette smoke. 3rd floor, number 12. Sterling knocked. Solomon answered. He didn't look surprised, didn't look angry, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from working 2 jobs for 14 years and knowing it will never be enough. "Mr. Ashford," Solomon said. Sterling didn't know what to say. All the speeches he'd prepared in his head dried up. All the explanations and justifications and carefully worded requests disappeared. So he said the only thing he could. "I need your help." Solomon studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "When?" "Tonight. I'll need to call my other job. Tell them I can't make my shift. I'll pay you whatever." "It's not about money, Mr. Ashford." Sterling stopped, looked at this man standing in the doorway of the apartment that probably cost less per month than Sterling spent on dry cleaning. "Then what is it about?" Sterling asked. Solomon smiled, sad, knowing. "It's about showing up," he said. At 11 p.m., Solomon walked through the side entrance of Mercy General. Valencia was waiting. She handed him a visitor's badge, official this time, approved by Sterling himself through channels that moved mountains in minutes when properly motivated. They didn't speak, just walked together to the elevator, to the 4th floor, to room 447. Solomon pushed open the door. Poet was facing the window, as always. But her fingers weren't moving through their pattern. They were just still, resting, resigned. Solomon sat down in the chair, pulled out the radio from his pocket, the same one returned to him by security at Sterling's order. He extended the antenna, found the jazz station, turned it on. Poet's head tilted. "Solomon?" "Yeah, baby girl. I'm here." She turned, reached out. Solomon took her hand. She didn't cry, didn't ask why he left, didn't need explanations. She just smiled. For the first time in 8 weeks, Poet smiled. Sterling watched from the doorway, watched this man who had nothing give his daughter everything, watched her come back to life in a way that no amount of money or expertise had been able to accomplish. And he finally understood what Valencia had tried to tell him. Solomon pulled out a thermos, poured soup into the wooden bowl, the same one, cleaned and returned. Set it on the table with a spoon. Poet felt for it, found it, and began to eat. Sterling stepped into the room, sat down on the other side of Poet's bed. "Can I have some?" he asked. Poet paused, then nodded. Solomon poured a second bowl, handed it to Sterling, and for the first time in 8 years, Sterling Ashford shared a meal with his daughter. In silence, the good kind, the kind where presence is enough. They sat there for an hour, jazz playing softly, rain falling outside. 3 people in a hospital room, none of them speaking, all of them finally present. When the bowl was empty, Sterling spoke. "I'd like you to stay," he said to Solomon. "I'll create a position. Personal care specialist. 6 figures. Benefits. Whatever you need." Solomon shook his head. "I'm not a nurse. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a man who showed up." "Then what do you want?" Solomon smiled. "I want you to keep showing up." 3 months later, the hospital garden was in full bloom. Poet walked with a cane, learning to navigate space through sound and touch and memory. Solomon walked beside her, describing flowers she couldn't see, letting her feel petals and leaves and bark. Sterling came every Tuesday and Thursday. Dinner. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. But he showed up, learned to sit with silence, learned that being present didn't mean fixing, that love wasn't measured in solutions, but in showing up even when you didn't have answers. Solomon never took the job Sterling offered. He went back to his janitorial work, to his 2 jobs, to his 3 grandkids. But he visited Poet twice a week, bringing soup and stories and the wooden bowl that had become a symbol of care that cost everything and demanded nothing. Poet started talking again, started smiling, started eating not because she had to, but because someone had shown her that being alive could mean being seen. Really seen, not as a problem to solve or a system to optimize, but as a human being worthy of presence. The transformation wasn't dramatic. There was no miraculous recovery, no headlines, no viral moment. Just slow, steady healing that happened in the spaces between words. In the silence that was no longer empty, but full. In the presence of people who'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just stay. Kindness isn't loud. It doesn't demand applause. It doesn't trend. It just shows up. In the dark. When no one's watching. When there's no reward, except the quiet knowledge that someone else's burden is a little lighter because you chose to carry some of the weight. At Black Journal Stories, we tell these stories because they remind us what it means to be human. The character isn't revealed in grand gestures, but in daily choices. That dignity isn't given by wealth or status, but earned through the courage to show up for people who can't repay you. That sometimes the most important work happens in the margins, done by people whose names will never be remembered, but whose impact echoes through generations. Solomon Hayes never made the news, never got recognition, never wanted it. He just kept showing up, kept being present, kept reminding one little girl that she mattered, not because she could see, not because she could speak, not because she could perform happiness or recovery or gratitude, but simply because she existed. And existence, he understood, was enough. The wooden bowl sits on a shelf in Poet's room now, next to the radio that still plays jazz on quiet nights, next to the cane she uses to explore a world she's learning to navigate, not through sight, but through connection, through the presence of people who showed her that being blind doesn't mean being invisible, that being broken doesn't mean being beyond repair. That sometimes the best medicine isn't found in hospitals or prescriptions or expert interventions, but in the simple act of one human being choosing to sit with another and say, without words, "You're not alone." This is what salvation looks like when it's real. Not miraculous, not cinematic, just present, just there, just enough.